I'm Matt at Nexus Baseball, and this is episode 29 of the Tommy John Epidemic. This series is a YouTube read of content from the book Plague of the Gods, an outsider's perspective on baseball's Tommy John Epidemic, which is available now on Amazon. I decided to put this content on YouTube to make the material as accessible as possible. This series examines the science behind the most superhuman action the human body can produce, accelerating a baseball up to 100 miles per hour. Baseball throwing provides natural advantages to hypermobile individuals that lack the tightness associated with muscular hypertrophy or growth in size, but they then become more susceptible to humeral instability. This is where the shoulder moves too much in its shallow socket and then can slip either forwards or backwards, damaging the rotator cuff. Likewise, the infra/teres minor combination is also responsible for decelerating the throwing arm, and without the proper strength can be pushed past its limits, causing damage. The good news is that the rotator cuff is skeletal muscle, just like any other in the body, and is capable of hypertrophy and strength increases. This is exactly why most pitchers that work with weighted baseballs see such a benefit. Velocity has always been created from throwing the ball hard and repeatedly to develop strength and endurance in the rotator cuff. Often the hardest muscles to train are the smallest, and depending on how much a pitcher utilizes the stretch response versus conscious contraction, they may not be developing their subscap as significantly as they are the external rotators with such a light weight. The weighted ball is a heavier object which elicits a stronger stretch response, often creating a better range of motion and layback, as well as requiring more engagement of the subscap to drive the baseball forward. The dangers, however, include pushing the body beyond its supportable range of motion of the shoulder due to incorrect mechanics or tightness, which can hurt the shoulder. The arm is traveling forward at a slower pace with weighted baseballs, however, and as discussed, slower motions are always easier to support muscularly than faster ones. This makes it less likely, if performed correctly, to damage the UCL than even a standard baseball. This understanding of the shoulder is becoming clearer with each passing year. A 2013 Harvard University study on the evolution of the throwing arm conducted by Dr. Neil Roach also concluded that the shoulder serves as a store for the energy created by the legs and trunk. You're storing energy in your shoulder. It works just like a slingshot would. Also, that this adaptation developed in humans naturally to use throwing for the purpose of hunting. Dr. Roach is quoted in The Arm as saying, "I was surprised at how effective this mechanism could be. These are tiny little ligaments and tendons, and yet they're accounting for more than 50% of the energy used for these rapid motions." The paper concludes that the expansion of the human waist allows the torso to rotate independently from the hips. This torso rotation generates large forces needed to stretch the elastic tendons and ligaments in the shoulder. This cocking of the arm stretches the tendons, ligaments, and muscles crossing the shoulder and stores elastic energy, like a slingshot. One point of conflict is a question of basic anatomy. As covered previously, ligaments are poor conduits of elastic energy in comparison to tendons and muscles. Dr. Larson, who reviewed the work for the New York Times, is quoted as questioning the work, asking, "Where are we storing this?" referring to the energy being supposedly stored in the shoulder. In mammals, the stretch response is usually held in long, thick tendons like the Achilles. It is highly unlikely that any of the energy is being conveyed from the small shoulder ligaments, but instead can be isolated as the powerful rotator cuff muscles, and most importantly, their tendons' ability to stretch. But what about the role of the big muscles of the upper body? Almost every pitching coach and strength trainer has been teaching pitchers to not use small muscles to do the job of big muscles. Therefore, what I've presented can be considered controversial. Let's look at what these large external muscles of the upper body actually do. The Latissimus dorsi muscle, one of the biggest muscles in the body, comprises much of the mass of the human back and connects to the inside of the humerus. It is capable of immense strength, lifting most of the body's weight in the pull-up exercise, and stabilizes the spine along with the abdominal muscles and obliques in any heavy lifting motion. It was shown in the EMG study to be more active in professionals than amateur pitchers. The problem with this interpretation is that the lat's primary responsibility in the pitching motion should be one only of stability. The reason that this is the case is that the lat is a massive muscle with some of the longest fibers in the body. These fibers take much longer than those of the specifically designed rotator cuff to contract and generate force, making them very poorly suited to the extremely quick rotation of the arm in the pitch. Additionally, the lat connects to the inside of the arm near the large muscles of the chest, the pectoralis major. Although the lats can be used for internal rotation of the humerus if the arm is in the right angle, their primary job is to pull the humerus downwards, as in the pull-up exercise. If the lat fires, for example, with the arm in front of the body, it would pull the arm downwards in a karate chop type motion. Why the EMG studies found it more active was for several reasons. The first is that unless a pitcher has perfect muscular control, it is challenging to flex the muscles of the rotator cuff independently. It takes a great deal of thought and practice, just as it does for Terry Crews to make his pecs contract independently of one another. If the arm is downward though, the cocking portion of the pitching motion and the lat flexes, it can hold back the humerus, assisting in delayed rotation of the arm. This is unnecessary with a proper transfer of force from the hips as well as mobility, but can add velocity in some cases, leading some pitchers to use it in conjunction with their rotators. Likewise, the professional pitcher is more likely going to be training athletically and possesses a stronger external musculature. This, combined with the prompting of coaches, will integrate this large muscle group more during the acceleration phase. There is even a drill called a pull-down throw that cues this specifically. The appearance of this in the motion is that look of muscling up on a pitch rather than a fluid delivery. Instead, the lat should be relaxed on the throwing arm side and flexible, but stable, to allow for torso rotation following the hips on the front side. Conversely, amateur pitchers have more developed external rotators, developed from the process of throwing and decelerating, but weaker hip drive, potentially requiring them to flex the external rotators more to achieve layback than they would if they had better timing and quicker hips. The deltoid muscles are also powerful external shoulder muscles that encompass the top of the humerus and connect to the scapula and clavicle, or the collarbone. They control the motion of the upper arm, forward, backwards, and on the side of the body. They are stronger muscles than the rotator cuff and provide the stability of the humerus against large loads in heavy lifting exercises to prevent dislocation and damage. They are much weaker the more the arm is extended from the side of the body. For example, try holding a few pounds in a side raise motion statically for a few seconds and you will see how quickly they tire. They also contract relatively slowly compared to the rotator cuff. In the pitching motion, the primary goal of the deltoids is also relaxation, as the humeral head requires free motion to complete its extremely quick rotation using the rotator cuff. Problematically, many pitchers train these muscles extensively, including doing other lifts where they act in a supporting role. Why many pitchers perform an arm swing from the center of the chest into the cocked position is that by utilizing gravity, they can relax these muscles to allow the rotator cuff to better complete its work. An even greater obstacle to overcome for many pitchers is the upper trapezius muscles that go from above the shoulder blades up through the neck. These muscles are responsible for the shrug motion, where the shoulders are brought up to near ear height. They are powerful stabilizers that are near constantly on, as they help hold the shoulders in position and are actively stabilizing any motion where the arms are not directly at the sides. So constantly used are these muscles that they become tight from things like typing, with our arms forward of the body for hours on end, even resulting in headaches. As stabilizers, they prevent our scapulas from dropping and ripping smaller muscles when we are lifting heavy objects from the ground. They can lift hundreds of pounds a short distance by themselves when trained. The difficulty is that whenever they flex, they stabilize, limiting scapular movement. Pitchers often stretch their arms out to the sides during the delivery to attempt to stretch the traps and prevent them from contracting. This allowing smaller internal muscles to do the job of holding up the arms instead. The correct muscles to use to elevate the shoulder blades are much smaller, harder muscles to isolate called the rhomboids and levator muscles, raising the shoulder blades to allow for greater humeral range of motion. Join me for episode 30 next week. Remember, if you like the content, please like and subscribe. Your support makes this work possible. Also, if you want to jump ahead, please consider picking up the book on Amazon from the link in the description below. See you next week.